Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. And today we're going to really be addressing a series of questions that I've been asked for some time. A lot of people ask me about airsoft handguns. Are they good training aids? Basically, is it worth my time? A lot of videos have been made about them, that kind of thing. Now, I'm certainly not going to be the first or last that talks about airsoft handguns in this capacity, right? But I will say that just over time, my opinion on it really has changed. Like if you'd asked me when I thought about this like 8 years ago, for instance, I would have told you that it just looks like a bunch of kids playing with toys. Now, this is not the case, at least not anymore. But there are certain things that I've been aware of, been made aware of, and that I look for in a training aid like this for guys that will use this to supplement their training regimen. Um, because all this kind of ropes itself around dry fire practice. So whatever that you're doing with this needs to be helpful for then going out and actually firing live ammunition and stuff. So there are a few things. There's actually three really big things that I really, really do need out of something like this. Um, that first thing is I need the triggers in these things to be very similar to, an actual Glock, for instance, because you have the dead air that's in there, the weight stacks up, and then it squishes through, right? Now, that's the oldest handgun that I have, and it has the most, and it's actually had by far the most, ammunition fired through it, because that thing was bought back in 2012, and it's got 71,000 rounds on it right now. So I can give an airsoft pistol a little bit of leeway because that's a factory Glock trigger with 70,000 rounds on it. So it's going to be a little polished compared to one straight out of box. So if this is a little bit lighter, I can give that a little bit of a pass, right? Because it'll still feel very similar. Now, this is the Elite Force Glock 19X, by the way. It's marked very similar to an actual Glock 19X, and as far as that trigger is concerned, it's very, very similar. Only thing that I did notice about these, because you still get dead air, weight stack, break, weight stack, squish, break, like you do out of Glocks, right? It just feels a little bit lighter, right? So for me, that's fine. Because I'm used to really broken in factory Glock triggers anyhow, right? It's either that or it's similar to the handgun I stole this light off of. You guys have seen this guy plenty. There's a Haley skimmer in here, so that's got a whole bunch of ammunition fired through it too, and they both of those feel relatively similar to this. Relatively meaning it's not like a stretch, right? To be like, oh, I guess it's kind of so. No, they're actually very, very similar to this. That's what I'm looking for. That's the number one thing I needed, and I'm actually really happy for that. Second, it's got to be accurate. It's got to be accurate. I need to be able to reach across my house and expect similar accuracy that I would out of a live fire handgun. Now, obviously, this tapers down as far as what I'm expecting out of it. As the distance stacks up, I'm not trying to hit 100-yard plates with this thing. But same time, I would say something inside of 15 yards, I should be able to expect very similar to handgun accuracy out of this. And I'm actually very happy to say that I can shoot the shirt, the sleeve of a hanging shirt from across the house, like 13, 14, 15 yards away. It's very easy to do. So that's the next box checked that I'm absolutely happy with. Third, sighting system can't be super jacked up. It's a set of Glock Sights. Okay. It had a set of friggin' 3-dot type setups, right? I tend to start blacking those out a little bit, and I need to redo that because it's starting to come out. But yeah, sighting system is fine. Looks like a regular set of handgun setup, set of sights. I don't know if you can actually change these with regular Glock sights. I haven't really tried to mess with this very much. I'm not trying to break things. But, you know, as long as I line the thing up and it's not readily apparent that I'm using an airsoft pistol, if that makes sense, then I'm happy. So good sights, nice and accurate, very, very similar trigger to what I'm carrying around. Very, very good to me personally. But the last one here really is this, between how, like, controls and weight. There's no point to me if I have same scale, right? But the thing is like a less than half a pound, right? It needs to actually feel like my carry piece if I'm going to take this seriously. And the thing is that if it doesn't weigh very, very similar to the live firearm, it's going to change up things. Because, like it or not, the draw speed and whatnot is going to change. How you index certain portions of the handgun so that you don't drop a live firearm, for instance, they're going to change. And if you have tens on tens of thousands of reps of something that is way, way, way lighter, for instance, than your live firearm, you're going to run into issues once you start messing with that live firearm. Or you're going to be extra cautious with messing with that thing on top, like, you can see what I'm saying, right? There's like a long list of issues that could possibly pop up. But this isn't the case either. This thing actually feels like a Glock 19X until you run the action. Then it's like the lightest thing I've ever felt in my life. So there are certain things that this is actually really, really good for. There are certain things that this is not so good for. I'm going to start with the things that it's not so good for first, because there's not really a whole lot. Doing 1R1s or shot reload shots or reload drills with gas blowback handguns or even electric pistols, which I would just recommend the gas blowback handguns, because they actually do cycle, right? And even if it's just very, very little recoil, it does help you. It does help you with things like flashlight pictures and things like that, because it's better to be exposed to a little bit than none, which regular dry fire practice doesn't give you. It doesn't give you dry fire practice unless you're the guy that's sitting there like, like trying to do another thing. So we get it, right? So point is, though, these are not very good for 1R1s. Number one, if you pin your thumbs on these too hard, or if you're the kind of person that really wants to reference that slide and then get into the slide lock lever, you see what I'm doing here, right? Like, this is depressed. See what I'm saying? So you can stop these with your thumbs or make them very, very, very slow, right? So as far as 1R1s go, full speed 1R1s and that kind of thing, where we're trying to make sure that we're doing that, as consistently as possible with live firearms. This is so inconsistent, especially with guys that have dominant handgun grips. These are so inconsistent with whether or not they will lock to the rear, or go forward, right, on time, that I can't recommend that to actually train with when it comes to, associating something with a live firearm. It's not consistent enough for that. And in addition to that, these magazine feed lips are different too. They're very, very exposed, and they are not made out of the same stuff as a Glock magazine is. Now, they'll take a few hits, like they'll take a few impacts. Like if you're at a force-on-force class, first of all, I wouldn't tell people at all ever to babysit their magazines. If they break, buy new ones. But I don't have to worry about these getting destroyed in like a force-on-force class. But I am worried about my feed lips cracking and getting all banged up and whatnot if I'm, just doing reload practice over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because, it should be very obvious, but the number of reloads that I'm going to do in training, especially when I'm training up motor skills, that's going to be many, many, many thousands of times more than any time I would ever have to do a reload in a force-on-force class. So it's pretty simple. So that's really what they're not good for at all. But as far as getting the draw practice in, especially if you're trying to see everything that you need to see in your sights, lining a shot up and breaking it correct, that's actually very, very important. Clearly, and these are very, very good at it. It's very good for that because the weight's very similar, the trigger's really good, and the accuracy is really good too. So if you set up, like a cardboard trap or whatever, and then hang a shirt and then hang sheets behind that, so this won't pierce the cardboard, because it totally will if there isn't something hanging out in front of it a little bit. That's actually very important because I have visual feedback, right? Because I line up my sights, bang, and then I see this hanging shirt react to that. And I'll even show you guys what I put together here in a second. I'll drag it out and we can look at it, right? But there's visual feedback from that kind of thing, which is very important to me. Also, it really, really helps you push the limit as far as your trigger manipulation is concerned without worrying about sending bullets wild. That's really important too, because it can help you get really, really high up there as far as how fast I can physically move my trigger finger. And for a lot of guys, that's one huge part of the problem. The other part's the recoil control part, right? But at least in my estimation, when you have both of those things together and you're really trying to manipulate that trigger finger fast, something that really can hamper you from wanting to go that fast is the simple fact that you want to clamp down and really make sure that handgun stays as flat as you can, keep it, so you're not sending bullets wild and that kind of thing. Because there's really a 22 or less worth of recoil on this. I don't have to worry about that anywhere near as much, so I can push those physical limitations significantly harder than I would with a live firearm, right? So that's very, very important to me personally, because it's just a part of the whole jigsaw puzzle that you're trying to assemble. The next thing too is like a hard target focus. Guys that train their hand-eye coordination and want to be able to do their hard target focus drills and that kind of stuff without the use of their sights. This is something that you can practice with projectiles that aren't bullets. So you can get, again, that visual feedback of where that stuff hits, because it lets you know where your hand-eye coordination is on the draw. And if you're constantly hitting, towards the sternum or center of the chest, right at the nip line, or in the shirt sleeve, or whatever, right? You can see what your tendencies are so that you can make little minor corrections to them. Those are big parts of this, right? It's not something as simple as line up sights, good press anymore. I actually have visual feedback on where stuff is impacting on a target I'm actually shooting at, right? So if I got similar weight and I got similar trigger to what it is that I'm actually using, it really, really does help to, do that draw in 1, draw in 3, draw in 5, 7, 8, whatever it is, right? So that's really important to me as far as a training aid goes. And, of course, if you decide to get really spry with your friends, you can have little force-on-force scenarios set up in like a house, to where if you have similar knowledge base and that kind of stuff, you can actually test your skills. You can more or less spar against a non-compliant opponent, which is what a lot of people do not have experience with in the training industry, and some trainers don't have that either. And the very last kind of person that you should be taking advice from is a guy that has no idea how to handle a non-compliant opponent. Because I will take the guy that's never been in combat, but is constantly shooting at people in Sims or Airsoft, than the person that's on the flat range that actually shot at a mouse hole with no return fire one time in his whole life and never did anything close to that again, and especially not force on force. You have to be able to spar with people. You have to be able to take on non-compliant opponents. And that is something that's so easy to do, because even if it's not formal training, at the very least, you understand the mindset of someone that is trying to not be shot and is trying to shoot you, right? So these are very important. And then, of course, if you actually run into guys that set up courses like this where you are actually shooting humans And you get at the point where you learn all that tactical shit, certain methods that you can apply to certain situations. It's very, very important. So having one of these yourself is very, very important. And having two is an order of magnitude more so. So as far as loading these, charging them up with gas and that kind of thing, there are far better qualified people than me to talk about that kind of thing. I highly suggest looking up dudes that do, Milsim and that kind of stuff on YouTube. They're far more qualified to talk about, the right gas to get, charging up your stuff, all of that kind of thing. I'm speaking about this from a firearms trainer side of the house and the benefits that one of these offer you, right? So let's talk a little bit about like an improvised trap that was built up and that kind of thing, so that I can use this in my house and I'm not, destroying furniture, punching holes in the walls and things like that. Because this absolutely will punch a hole through the drywall if you let it. If you're close enough and if there are no barriers, you can 100% sail this through drywall, no problem. And like they'll make you bleed too. Like if I stand right here and shoot somebody, 100% is getting stuck in that person. So if you do force on force stuff with other people, like cover up for real. Like iPro, a lot of people wear electronic ear protection because getting shot in the earlobe is awful. And some people wear gloves and that kind of stuff too, mostly because so that you don't walk out of there bleeding everywhere. Same thing that if you were to spar in like a fighting gym, you protect yourself. You gear up, mouth guard, fucking headgear, gloves, that kind of stuff, right? So think about it in that way, so, and you can prevent possible injuries, right? So let's talk about this trap. All right, so this is kind of ghetto, but basically a bunch of moving boxes and that kind of stuff. And that's all it really was. We just made something that was contained. We shoved a freaking coat hanger through the top, hung a shirt so that we can actually get visual feedback from impacts, on stuff. Hung this in the center, more or less, of the roof here, and then hung a sheet behind it because these will absolutely pierce cardboard, no problem. So there's basically a double redundancy in there to make sure you take all the energy out of it. So like most things, startup can be a little expensive with these. They really can. All you have to do is just look it up. If you look at the Elite Force, Airsoft or Glock, something along those lines as far as what words that you look up, and then start looking at price point. You get a couple of these and the startup stuff for them, and it's almost like buying a handgun. Okay. But the value that it can offer someone if you do it right could be worth far more than the startup costs all day long. So I encourage people that are interested in it to start dabbling in it a little bit. For me personally, they really have helped a lot. Now the question is going to come up, shot timers, right? Do these work well with shot timers? The answer is like yes and no. And really, it's almost like on a case-by-case basis, shot timer to shot timer, and they could be made by the same manufacturer. Because setting a shot timer to its max sensitivity, sometimes it picks this thing up, right, consistently. Sometimes they just don't. Probably the most sensitive shot timers that I could possibly think of are actually apps for cell phones. But the problem with that is to get them sensitive enough to pick these up consistently, a lot of times I have to make it so sensitive that I'm picking up everything. Like I could pick up me cracking my knuckles, right? So what helps me personally with shot timers in this is concerned is set par times so that the second beep goes off and you know more or less if you're in the correct neighborhood. And if you're constantly in front of that second beep, okay, now it's time to decrease the par time, right? So pretty quick workarounds as far as that's concerned. I hope you guys found this helpful, for guys that are looking into this, because a lot of people ask me a lot of airsoft questions, and I'm not an airsoft person, so this is just me talking about this from a firearms trainer point of view, right? But as far as this is concerned, it's very helpful. So I hope you guys pulled some information from this, or for those of you that were on the fence, or that have been looking down on this in the past. Maybe I provided enough information to where you're starting to, start to quit being so damn stubborn about it. Because when I quit being really stubborn about it, this absolutely helped me a lot. It helps me get, as far as just presentation on target, it actually has helped quite a bit with flash sight picture because I'm just more used to it in a more controlled setting now, in an even more controlled setting than a training range. And honestly, I got significantly faster with just the individual presses of the trigger, right? Because the recoil control part I've got down. I've had it down forever. But after a while, you start to realize, I can bang these out a little bit faster. And if you train up with that, okay, that's why that trigger part's so important. You can get significantly faster. So that, and just being able to spar with friends, it's really, really fun. Number one. And number two, it starts to culture you to deal with non-compliant opponents. So, I find that nice and valuable. Maybe you will. For those of you that want to come out and get trained by us, you absolutely can. I posted a couple new classes that you can go check out. Next week, we're doing mechanical pistol and rifle out in Drakesboro, Kentucky. We're going to places like Mississippi and Florida soon. We're working on Georgia. We're working on a few other places and that kind of thing. So there are a few new classes already posted. So if you want to check that out, link in the description. If you want to support us through Patreon, it helps us do all kinds of nonsense like this, number one. And number two, if you want to get something out of it and get trained up as much as you want with us, $41 a month gets you exactly that. Link for that is in the description below. If you want to see updates either on the channel or with the company as far as when classes are coming out to different places, or if you just want to shitpost, link in the description below for our Facebook page. So I'm done with the plugs. I'm done with the video. Remember, regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.